Hello, everyone, and welcome back to English Without Limit. I'm your host, Julia. If you're new here, this channel helps you improve your English every single day through real-life stories, natural conversations, and daily situations. So make sure to listen carefully, repeat after me if you can, and enjoy today's English listening practice. Today, I want to share something that happened to me recently. It's about dealing with unexpected problems. It's one of those things that can happen to anyone, and it really helps you practice daily English expressions. Last week, I was getting ready for work early in the morning. I made breakfast, packed my lunch, and got dressed. Everything was going smoothly until I tried to start my car. It didn't make a sound. I tried again, and still nothing. My car had completely stopped working. I remember standing there thinking, oh no, not today. I called my neighbor Daniel, who is really kind and always helps others. He came over with his tools and said, let's check your battery first. We opened the hood and found that one of the cables was loose. Daniel fixed it, and after a few minutes, my car finally started. I felt so thankful. That morning taught me how small problems can become big if we don't stay calm. Now, let's think about this situation in English. When you face a problem like that, what do you usually say? You can say things like, something's wrong with my car, or it won't start. If someone helps you, you can say, thank you so much for your help, or I really appreciate it. After that morning, I went to work feeling a bit late, but proud that I handled the situation calmly. At lunch, I told my coworker Emily about it. She laughed and said she once locked herself out of her house while taking the trash out. She had to wait for her husband to come home with the key. We both laughed because these small, everyday problems connect us all. You see, life always brings little surprises. Sometimes your car won't start. Sometimes your key gets stuck. And sometimes the power goes out in the middle of cooking dinner. But what really matters is how we react. When you speak English in these moments, it helps to stay relaxed and use short, clear sentences. For example, if the power goes out, you can say, the electricity is gone, or there's a power cut. If you're talking to someone on the phone, you might say, sorry, the line is breaking up, or can you hear me clearly now? These expressions sound simple, but they make your English more natural. Imagine you're visiting a new country and something unexpected happens. Maybe your bus is late or your order at a restaurant is wrong. Staying calm and using polite English makes every situation easier. Speaking of restaurants, I remember one time when my friend Daniel and I went out for dinner after work. I ordered vegetable soup, but the waiter brought chicken soup by mistake. Instead of getting upset, I smiled and said, excuse me, I think this might be the wrong soup. The waiter apologized and quickly brought the right one. That small act of kindness made the evening pleasant for everyone. In moments like that, kindness and clear communication are powerful. You can always use polite phrases like, excuse me, could you please, and thank you for your help. They show respect and make people want to help you more. Another everyday story I can share happened on a rainy day. I was walking to the supermarket with my umbrella when a strong wind suddenly flipped it inside out. Everyone around me laughed because it looked so funny. A man nearby, Mr. Johnson, came over and said, that umbrella doesn't like the rain very much. We both laughed and he helped me fix it. It reminded me how laughter can make awkward moments easier. When you talk to others in English, small jokes or kind words can make communication warmer. You can say something like, it's not my lucky day, or that was unexpected. These expressions make you sound more fluent and friendly. English is not just about grammar. It's also about confidence and emotion. Even small daily stories like fixing your car or losing your umbrella can help you learn useful language. Every time you listen to a story like this, try to repeat some sentences aloud. For example, repeat after me. I can handle this. It's okay. I'll find a solution. Thank you for helping me. These are phrases you can use in real life when something doesn't go as planned. Once, my cousin Sophia shared a story that taught me something important about staying patient. She was baking a cake for her parents' anniversary, and just as she was about to put it in the oven, she realized she had forgotten the sugar. Instead of getting angry, she laughed, added the sugar, and started again. The cake turned out perfect. She said, "Sometimes mistakes make the story better." That made me think, in English and in life, mistakes are not bad. They are part of learning. When you make a mistake in English, don't feel embarrassed. Just correct yourself and continue. That's how you grow and sound more natural. So today's listening lesson is about staying calm, speaking clearly, and finding positive ways to handle problems. Whether it's a broken car, a wrong order, or a missing ingredient, there's always something to learn and a way to practice your English while doing it. I'll tell you another simple story from my daily life. A few days ago, my neighbor Mrs. Wilson knocked on my door because she couldn't figure out how to use her new washing machine. She said, "Julia, I pressed the button, but nothing is happening." I checked and saw that the plug wasn't connected. We both laughed. She thanked me with some homemade cookies. It was such a warm moment that reminded me how kindness connects people. In English, you can describe this situation by saying, "My washing machine isn't working," or "I can't turn it on." And when someone helps you, always say, "You're very kind," or "That was really nice of you." These small expressions make communication more personal and respectful. Language learning is not only about big conversations. It's about small daily interactions, saying hello to your neighbor, asking for help, thanking someone, or explaining a little problem. Each of these moments helps you practice English in a real, natural way. So today's listening lesson is about staying calm, speaking clearly, and finding positive ways to handle problems. Whether it's a broken car, a wrong order, or a missing ingredient, there's always something to learn and a way to practice your English while doing it. I'll tell you another simple story from my daily life. A few days ago, my neighbor Mrs. Wilson knocked on my door because she couldn't figure out how to use her new washing machine. She said, "Julia, I pressed the button, but nothing is happening." I checked and saw that the plug wasn't connected. We both laughed. She thanked me with some homemade cookies. It was such a warm moment that reminded me how kindness connects people. In English, you can describe this situation by saying, "My washing machine isn't working," or "I can't turn it on." And when someone helps you, always say, "You're very kind," or "That was really nice of you." These small expressions make communication more personal and respectful. Language learning is not only about big conversations, it's about small daily interactions, saying hello to your neighbor, asking for help, thanking someone, or explaining a little problem. Each of these moments helps you practice English in a real, natural way. So, as you listen today, think about your own daily stories. Maybe you missed the bus, spilled some coffee, or forgot your umbrella at home. These small experiences can teach you new English phrases and help you improve naturally. One of the most common daily problems people face is forgetting something important at home. I remember one morning when I was running late for work, and halfway down the street, I realized I had left my phone on the kitchen table. I stopped, took a deep breath, and said to myself, "Okay, Julia, stay calm. You can go back and still make it on time." I walked quickly back, grabbed my phone, and then laughed because I had also forgotten my lunch bag. It was one of those mornings when everything seemed to go wrong. But instead of getting angry, I smiled and said, "It's just a busy day." That small moment reminded me how our attitude changes everything. When things like this happen, we often use phrases like, "I forgot my phone," or "I left it at home." If you're talking to someone, you can say, "I'll be late because I need to go back." These short and simple sentences help you communicate clearly in daily life. Later that day at work, my coworker Sarah told me she had left her house keys inside and locked the door. She stood outside for 2 hours waiting for her husband to come home. She said it was a funny memory now, but at that time she was really worried. We laughed together and talked about how everyone has small accidents sometimes. These shared experiences make daily English conversations natural and real. I think daily stories are powerful because they show how language connects us. Let me tell you another one that happened last month. It was a Sunday afternoon and I was preparing lunch for my family. My plan was to cook rice, vegetables, and chicken. But when I opened the fridge, I realized I didn't have any onions or garlic. So I decided to ask my neighbor, Mrs. Brown, for some. When I knocked on her door, she smiled and said, "Of course, take as many as you need." That day, we cooked together and shared lunch. Moments like this are great for practicing English expressions such as, "Can I borrow some onions?" or "Do you have any garlic?" When you offer help, you can say, "Sure, let me get that for you." Or, "I have some, you can take it." These phrases are useful in everyday life, especially when you want to sound friendly and polite. After lunch, Mrs. Brown and I had tea together. She shared a story about when she moved to this neighborhood many years ago. She said she didn't know anyone at first, but by helping others and talking to people, she made friends quickly. That reminded me that communication is the key to feeling at home anywhere in the world. English learners often worry about speaking perfectly. But the truth is, small conversations like, "How are you today?" or "Would you like some tea?" are what build confidence. You can practice speaking naturally by using short and polite sentences. Later that week, something funny happened again. I was in the supermarket with my shopping list in hand. I needed rice, milk, bread, and eggs. But when I got to the checkout counter, I realized I had forgotten my wallet at home. I smiled at the cashier and said, "I'm so sorry. I left my wallet at home. I'll be back soon." She was very kind and said, "No problem. I'll keep your items here." I rushed home, got my wallet, and came back. When I returned, the cashier smiled and said, "You made it." We both laughed, and I thanked her for her patience. That simple interaction reminded me that kindness and honesty always make communication easier. If you ever forget something, just stay calm and speak politely. Use sentences like, "I'll come back soon," or "Thank you for understanding." People appreciate it when you speak kindly. Another story that always makes me smile is about my cousin Daniel. He once tried to fix a broken chair by himself. He was so confident that he didn't want any help. But after 10 minutes, he accidentally glued his hand to the chair leg. He shouted for help, and his wife came running. She helped him free his hand, and they both started laughing. Daniel said, "I learned that sometimes it's better to ask for help first." From that story, we can learn a few good English expressions like, "Can you give me a hand?" or "I think I need some help." These are very common phrases in daily English. Everyday English is full of small actions like helping, thanking, asking, and explaining. You don't always need difficult grammar or long sentences. You just need confidence and practice. Let's move to another daily story that can help you practice describing situations. A few days ago, it was raining heavily in the evening. I was waiting for a taxi, but none were coming. After 15 minutes, I saw a woman named Clara standing nearby with an umbrella. She noticed that I didn't have one and said, "Would you like to share my umbrella until your taxi comes?" I smiled and said, "Thank you. That's very kind of you." We started talking, and within minutes, we became friends. She told me she had moved to the city last month and was still learning English. We practiced simple sentences together while waiting. This story reminds us that daily life gives us many chances to practice English. Even when you are waiting for a taxi or standing in line, you can speak politely and learn something new. Phrases like, "Would you like to share?" or "That's very kind of you," show respect and friendliness. Later, when I got home, I realized how small moments can create strong connections. Every conversation, no matter how short, helps you grow as an English speaker. Let's talk about another real-life situation. One weekend, my washing machine stopped working again. I pressed the button several times, but nothing happened. I unplugged it and plugged it back in. Still no luck. I didn't know what to do, so I called my friend David, who knows a lot about home repairs. He said, "Don't worry, Julia. Check the fuse box first." When I opened it, I saw that one switch had turned off. I flipped it back on, and the washing machine started working immediately. I laughed and said, "You saved my day." He replied, "Sometimes it's just a small thing." This story shows how useful it is to know everyday English for house problems. You can say, "The power went off," or "The machine isn't working." And when someone helps you, you can say, "That was very helpful," or "I really appreciate it." Sometimes English learning is not just about grammar books. It's about listening, observing, and using real sentences in your own life. Now, let me tell you something from when I visited my aunt in the countryside. Her house is surrounded by trees, and there's a small garden where she grows vegetables. One morning, we went outside to pick tomatoes, but when we reached the garden, we saw that a rabbit had eaten half of them. My aunt laughed and said, "Well, I guess the rabbit enjoyed breakfast before us." We decided to build a small fence around the plants. It became a fun activity. That story can help you practice phrases like, "Let's fix this problem," or "We can try again tomorrow." These are good for showing teamwork and positivity in English. Later, we sat on the porch drinking tea, and she told me about her early days living there. She said that when she first moved in, everything felt difficult. No nearby shops, no public transport. But with time, she learned to love the peace and nature around her. Her story reminded me that patience and practice are important in both life and language. Learning English is very similar. At first, you might feel lost or unsure, but with time and practice, it becomes easier and more natural. Another story I like is from my student, Robert. He once shared that he lost his bus card on his way to work. He searched every pocket but couldn't find it. When he told the bus driver, the driver said, "It's okay. You can pay next time." Robert said he was surprised by the kindness and later returned to pay. That story taught him the importance of honesty and gratitude. From that, you can learn sentences like, "I lost my card," or "Thank you for understanding." Small daily actions like this build good character and improve your English at the same time. There are so many moments every day when you can practice. When you go shopping, you can say, "How much is this?" Or, "Do you have this in a smaller size?" When you take the bus, you can ask, "Does this bus go to the city center?" When you order food, you can say, "I'd like some rice, please." Each of these simple interactions makes your English stronger. The more you use them, the more natural you sound. One of my favorite stories is about a small mistake I made while speaking English years ago. I was traveling to another city and I wanted to buy some bread. But instead of saying, "I'd like a loaf of bread," I said, "I'd like a bread." The shopkeeper smiled kindly and said, "You mean a loaf of bread?" I smiled back and said, "Yes, thank you." That gentle correction helped me remember it forever. Mistakes are part of learning, and we should never feel afraid of them. Every time you make one, it means you are improving. Another day, I went to the post office to send a small package to my cousin. The clerk asked, "Would you like it delivered quickly or normally?" I said, "Quickly, please. It's a birthday gift." She smiled and said, "That's lovely." That simple conversation made my day better. Daily English is full of these warm, real interactions. The key is to listen carefully, answer politely, and enjoy learning through real experiences. I'll share one more story before we finish. Last winter, it snowed heavily in my city. The streets were white and everything looked peaceful. But when I went outside, I slipped and almost fell. A man nearby caught my arm and said, "Careful, it's very slippery." I thanked him and said, "Yes, I should walk slower." We talked for a minute about how beautiful the snow looked. It was a small, kind moment between strangers. You can use sentences like, "Be careful, it's slippery," or "Thank you for helping me." These simple expressions make communication smoother and more human. Every story, no matter how small, gives us new words and ways to express ourselves. When you listen and repeat these stories, your English becomes more natural and confident. One morning, I was walking to the nearby bakery to buy some fresh bread. The air was cool and the streets were quiet. When I reached the bakery, I noticed a long line of people waiting outside. Everyone looked a little impatient, but the smell of freshly baked bread made it worth the wait. When it was finally my turn, the baker smiled and said, "Good morning, Julia. How are you today?" I smiled back and said, "I'm good, thank you. The bread smells amazing today." He laughed and replied, "It's because I woke up extra early." We both laughed, and I left the shop with warm bread and a warm heart. Small exchanges like this are what make everyday English so special. When you speak to people with kindness, they respond with kindness too. You can practice simple sentences like, "Good morning, how are you?" or "That smells great." These are easy to say, but create a positive connection. After leaving the bakery, I met my neighbor Clara carrying a heavy shopping bag. I asked, "Do you need some help with that?" She smiled and said, "Oh, that would be wonderful. Thank you." We walked together to her house, and along the way, we talked about our morning routines. She told me that she wakes up early, makes breakfast for her family, and then waters her plants before going to work. I told her that I usually start my day with a short walk. That short conversation helped both of us start the day with a smile. Everyday English is full of moments like this. You can use sentences such as, "Let me help you," or "That's very kind of you." These small gestures of politeness help build confidence in your communication. Later that afternoon, something interesting happened. I was working on my computer when suddenly the internet stopped working. I tried reconnecting, but it didn't work. I restarted the router, still nothing. I took a deep breath and called the service center. The technician said, "There's a small issue in your area, but it will be fixed soon." I said, "Thank you for letting me know." Instead of getting upset, I decided to use that time to read a book. Sometimes when things don't go as planned, we can practice patience and use positive language. For example, you can say, "That's okay, I'll wait," or "I'll do something else for now." These sentences help you stay calm and sound natural in English. The next day, I had another funny experience. I went to the market to buy some vegetables, carrots, potatoes, and tomatoes. When I reached the tomato section, I saw two baskets, one with small tomatoes and the other with big ones. I asked the seller, "What's the difference between these two?" He said, "Julia, the small ones are sweeter and the big ones are better for cooking." I smiled and said, "Then I'll take both." We laughed and he gave me a small discount. That short exchange helped me practice speaking clearly while buying things. When you go shopping, try using phrases like, "How much is this?" or "Can I have half a kilo, please?" These are very useful in markets, grocery stores, or shops. After coming back home, I started cooking lunch. I was making rice and vegetables when I realized I had forgotten to buy salt. I thought about going back to the shop, but then I remembered my kind neighbor, Mrs. Brown. I knocked on her door and said, "Hello, Mrs. Brown. Do you have some salt I can borrow?" She smiled and said, "Of course, Julia. Take as much as you need." She even told me about a new recipe she had tried the day before. I thanked her and she said, "That's what neighbors are for." That simple moment made me feel grateful for the kindness around me. When you borrow or lend something, it's important to use polite language. You can say, "Could I borrow some sugar?" or "Here, I brought it back. Thank you for lending it to me." These polite sentences make everyday interactions smooth and friendly. The next story I want to share happened at a park near my house. It was a beautiful sunny day and many families were there. Children were playing, people were jogging, and some were reading under trees. I sat on a bench with a cup of tea and watched the people passing by. A small boy was flying a kite, but suddenly the string broke and the kite flew away. He looked sad, so I said, "Don't worry, maybe you can make another one." His father smiled and said, "That's a good idea. We'll make one together." The boy smiled again, And I felt happy to see how simple words can change someone's mood. You can learn phrases like, "Don't worry," or "It's okay, you can try again." These are helpful in everyday life, especially when you want to comfort or encourage someone. Later in the evening, I decided to visit the library. It's a quiet place where I like to spend time reading or studying. When I entered, the librarian greeted me with a warm smile. I said, "Good evening. How are you today?" She said, "I'm doing well. How about you?" We had a short conversation before I went to the reading area. I found a book about nature and started reading. An hour later, an older man sitting nearby said, "You seem to love reading." I smiled and said, "Yes, books make me happy." He nodded and said, "That's wonderful. Reading keeps the mind young." That simple chat reminded me how easy it is to connect with people through shared interests. When you visit public places like libraries, parks, or offices, you can use polite small talk to practice English. Sentences like, "This place is beautiful," or "Do you come here often?" help start friendly conversations. The next morning, I had an unexpected visitor. My cousin Robert came to my door carrying a basket of fresh fruits from his garden. I said, "Wow, these look amazing. Did you grow them yourself?" He said proudly, "Yes, it took some time, but now we have apples, oranges, and even strawberries." We sat down for tea, and he told me about his new hobby of gardening. He said it helps him relax and spend time outdoors. I told him I wanted to try growing herbs on my balcony. He gave me a few tips about watering and sunlight. That conversation was full of learning and positivity. When talking about hobbies in English, you can use sentences like, "I enjoy gardening," or "I like spending time outdoors." If you want to ask someone, you can say, "What do you do in your free time?" Or, "Do you have any hobbies?" These questions are perfect for friendly chats. A few days later, I had another small adventure. I went to the bus stop to go downtown. The bus was late, and people around me started checking their watches. A woman next to me said, "Looks like the bus is taking a little longer today." I replied, "Yes, maybe there's traffic." We started talking about how unpredictable traffic can be in the mornings. After a few minutes, the bus arrived and everyone smiled in relief. That short talk helped pass the waiting time pleasantly. Simple conversations like this happen everywhere. You can use sentences like, "Is the bus always late?" Or, "There must be some traffic today." Practicing small talk in such moments improves your fluency naturally. Another time, I was at the post office to send a small package. The person at the counter said, "Please fill out this form." I took the form and wrote my details. Then I asked, "How long will it take to arrive?" The person said, "It will take around 3 days." I said, "Thank you very much." That short conversation helped me practice polite questioning. When you are at an office or service center, always use polite sentences such as, "Could you please help me with this?" or "Thank you for your time." Being respectful makes a good impression. Later that day, something funny happened at home. I was cleaning the kitchen when I accidentally dropped a glass. It shattered into small pieces. I said to myself, "That was clumsy of me." Then I carefully picked up the pieces and threw them away. Just then, my husband came in and said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yes, I'm fine. I just made a little mess." He smiled and said, "Let me help you clean it up." We both laughed. In English, you can describe such situations by saying, "I dropped it by accident," or "It slipped from my hand." These are everyday phrases that help you express yourself clearly. Another nice story I remember is about my neighbor's son, Michael. He's a very polite boy. One evening, he came to my door holding a plate of cookies his mother had baked. He said, "My mom made these for you." I thanked him and said, "That's so sweet of you." He smiled proudly and said, "She said it's to thank you for helping with the garden." That small gesture made my day brighter. When you receive a gift or favor, it's always polite to say things like, "That's very thoughtful of you," or "I really appreciate this." Politeness makes communication warm and respectful. The next weekend, I went to the park again. This time, I met an elderly man named Mr. Wilson sitting on a bench feeding birds. I sat beside him and he said, "The birds come here every morning." I said, "They must love you." He smiled and said, "Maybe they just love the food." We laughed together. We talked about nature, simple living, and how peaceful mornings can be. Conversations like these remind us that learning English doesn't always mean studying. Sometimes it just means talking, listening, and enjoying simple moments. The next morning started with bright sunshine and the soft breeze. I opened the windows and the smell of fresh air filled the room. It was the perfect day to do laundry. I gathered all my clothes, sorted them, and started the washing machine. Everything seemed peaceful until suddenly I heard a strange sound. The machine started shaking loudly. I quickly pressed the stop button, but it was too late. A small puddle of water had already formed on the floor. I sighed and laughed at the same time. I said to myself, "It looks like my washing machine wants a day off." I called my friend David because he's very good at fixing things. When he arrived, he checked the machine and said, "It's just the loose holes, nothing serious." He fixed it in 10 minutes and I thanked him with a cup of tea. While we were having tea, we talked about how small problems can turn into funny memories later. That conversation reminded me that there's always something to learn in everyday situations. You can use expressions like, "It stopped working suddenly," or "Can you check what's wrong?" They're simple, but very useful. And when someone helps you, always say, "Thank you so much. I really appreciate it." Later that day, I decided to go for a walk in the park. It was full of people enjoying the weather. Some were walking their dogs, others were exercising, and children were playing with colorful balls. I sat on the bench and watched the little boy trying to feed a bird. The bird kept flying away, and the boy laughed each time. His mother said, "Be patient. The bird will come back." The boy smiled and waited quietly. After a few minutes, the bird returned, and he managed to feed it. Everyone around smiled at that sweet moment. From this small scene, we can learn how patience and kindness make life more peaceful. In English, you can say, "Take your time," or "Be patient. It will happen." These short sentences are positive and easy to use in daily conversations. When I was walking back home, I saw my neighbor, Mr. Lee, standing outside looking at his car. I asked, "Is everything okay?" He said, "I think one of the tires is flat." I offered to help him check it. Together, we found the small hole, and he said, "I'll fix it later." I said, "I have an air pump at home. Do you want to borrow it?" He smiled gratefully and said, "That would be very helpful. Thank you." Helping each other in simple ways builds strong friendships. You can practice sentences like, "Do you need some help?" or "Can I borrow your tools?" These expressions are great for friendly daily interactions. The next morning, something unexpected happened again. I woke up early, made breakfast, and prepared to leave for work. But as soon as I stepped outside, it started raining heavily. I didn't have my umbrella. I ran back inside, grabbed it, and smiled, thinking how unpredictable weather can be. When I reached the bus stop, everyone was trying to stay dry under the small shelter. A woman beside me laughed and said, "Looks like the rain surprised all of us." I laughed too and said, "Yes, I thought it was going to be sunny all day." We continued talking until the bus arrived. That small chat made waiting in the rain more enjoyable. When you talk to strangers, even for a short time, it helps you practice your listening and speaking. You can use phrases like, "The weather changed so quickly," or "I didn't expect rain today." They sound natural and are used every day by native speakers. After work, I went to the grocery store to buy some fruits. I picked up some apples and bananas, but when I reached the counter, the cashier said, "Sorry, the card machine isn't working right now." I said, "That's okay. I have some cash." She smiled and said, "Thank you for understanding." We both laughed, and I said, "It's always good to have a backup plan." These short real-life moments make language learning more natural because they happen often when you face small inconveniences. You can say, "That's all right," or "No problem, I can manage." These expressions help you stay polite and positive. A few days later, I visited my aunt who lives in a nearby village. Her house is surrounded by green fields and small hills. When I arrived, she was baking bread, and the whole house smelled wonderful. She greeted me with a hug and said, "You came just in time for lunch." We sat together and talked about her garden. She showed me her tomato plants, which were growing beautifully. I asked, "How do you make them so healthy?" She said, "I talk to them every morning." We both laughed, and then she said, "Plants grow better when you care for them." That made me think learning English is a lot like growing plants. The more you care for it, the more it grows. You can practice sentences like, "How do you take care of your plants?" or "That smells wonderful." These are simple but useful and friendly conversations. That evening, we decided to take a short walk near the river. The sky was turning orange as the sun went down. The reflection on the water looked beautiful. We met a fisherman sitting by the riverbank. My aunt asked, "Have you caught anything today?" He smiled and said, "Just a few small fish, enough for dinner." He then told us how peaceful it feels to sit by the water every evening. We listened quietly as he shared stories from his life. Moments like these teach us how listening is just as important as speaking. When you listen carefully, you learn new words, accents, and ways of expressing emotions. You can respond by saying, "That's interesting," or "I see what you mean." These show that you are engaged in the conversation. The next day, I returned home feeling refreshed. I decided to clean my room and organize my desk. While cleaning, I found an old notebook from when I first started learning English. It was full of vocabulary words and short sentences I had written years ago. I smiled while reading them because some words that once felt difficult now felt easy. I realized how much progress I had made. When you are learning English, always keep a notebook for new words and expressions. Write sentences like, "Today I learned a new word," or "I will use this phrase tomorrow." It helps you remember and use what you learn. That afternoon, my cousin Robert came to visit again. He brought a small jar of honey from his beehives. I said, "This looks delicious. Do you have your own bees now?" He nodded proudly and said, "Yes, I started a small beekeeping project." I was curious, so I asked, "Is it hard to take care of bees?" He said, "Not really, but you have to be careful and patient." I tasted the honey and said, It's amazing, better than any store-bought one." He smiled and said, "That's because it's made with love." Through this story, you can learn how to express curiosity and appreciation. You can ask questions like, "How did you learn that?" Or, "Is it difficult to do?" And you can show gratitude by saying, "That's wonderful," or "It tastes great." The next morning, I went for a walk around my neighborhood. I saw Mrs. Wilson sweeping the front of her house. I said, "Good morning, how are you?" She smiled and said, "I'm fine, just cleaning up before my grandchildren visit." I said, "That's lovely. They must be excited to see you." She nodded and said, "Yes, they always bring so much energy to the house." We laughed and continued chatting about family life. Conversations about family are common and easy ways to connect with others. You can say, "Do you have children?" Or, "My family lives nearby." These are friendly and natural ways to keep the conversation going. Later that afternoon, I went to the local market again to buy some milk and bread. While waiting in line, an older man accidentally dropped his wallet. I quickly picked it up and said, "Sir, you dropped your wallet." He looked surprised and said, "Oh, thank you so much, young lady." I smiled and said, "You're welcome. It's easy to drop things when we're in a hurry." He laughed and said, "That's true." Acts of honesty and kindness always make the world better. You can practice sentences like, "You dropped this," or "Be careful, it might fall." These are small but very useful phrases in daily life. When I got home, I made a cup of tea and sat by the window. The sky was cloudy, and it looked like it might rain again. I thought about how every small event in my week, the broken washing machine, the rain, the market visit, had taught me something valuable. Each situation gave me a chance to use English in real life. Then, suddenly, I remembered that I had promised to call my aunt that evening. I picked up the phone and said, "Hello, Aunt. How are you doing today?" She said, "I'm fine, dear. Did you get home safely yesterday?" I said, "Yes, the trip was good. Thank you for the wonderful lunch." We talked about her garden again, and she invited me to visit next weekend. I said, "I'd love to." Simple phone conversations like that help you practice speaking naturally without stress. You can use polite phone expressions such as, "May I speak to?" or "It was nice talking to you." They make your English more fluent and confident. Before going to bed that night, I reflected on how language learning happens every day through small, meaningful interactions. Whether you're talking to a neighbor, helping a friend, or even fixing a small problem, each experience teaches you something new. The next morning, I woke up early and made a list of things to do. I wanted to make the most of my day. The first thing on the list was cleaning my kitchen. I turned on some soft music, rolled up my sleeves, and started washing the dishes. As I cleaned, I thought about how organizing simple tasks can make life smoother. When the kitchen looked neat and shiny, I felt proud. I made myself a cup of coffee and said out loud, "It feels so good when things are clean and in order." While drinking my coffee, I looked out the window and saw a delivery truck stop in front of my house. The driver stepped out and called my name. I was surprised because I hadn't ordered anything today. He handed me a small box and said, "Package for you." I said, "Oh, thank you, but I didn't expect a delivery today." He smiled and said, "It's from your cousin Robert." I laughed and said, "That explains it." When I opened the box, I found a handmade wooden pen holder and a note that said, "For your writing desk. Hope it helps you stay organized." I smiled because it was such a thoughtful gift. I immediately placed it on my desk and arranged my pens inside. I took a picture and sent it to him with a message saying, "I just received your gift. Thank you so much. It looks perfect on my desk." He replied, "Glad I liked it. I made it myself." You can use expressions like, "I just received your gift," or "It's really thoughtful of you." These phrases show appreciation and politeness when someone gives you something. Later in the morning, I went out for a quick walk. The air was cool and birds were singing in the trees. On my way, I met my neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, walking her dog. She smiled and said, "Good morning. Isn't it a beautiful day?" I said, "Yes, it's wonderful. The weather feels perfect for a walk." Her dog wagged his tail happily. I asked, "What's your dog's name?" She said, "His name is Bruno. He loves meeting new people." I smiled and said, "He's very friendly." Simple conversations like this help build confidence in daily communication. You can use phrases like, "What's your pet's name?" or "He's so cute." They make your English sound warm and friendly. After the walk, I went to a small cafe nearby to have breakfast. The cafe was cozy, with a soft smell of fresh bread and coffee in the air. A waiter greeted me with a smile and said, "Good morning. What would you like to order today?" I said, "I'll have a cheese sandwich and a cup of tea, please." He replied, "Sure, it will be ready in a few minutes." I found a seat near the window and watched people walking by outside. A few minutes later, the waiter brought my order. The sandwich was warm and the tea was just right. I took a sip and said softly, "This tastes amazing." When I finished, I went to the counter to pay and said, "Everything was delicious. Thank you." The waiter smiled and said, "I'm happy you enjoyed it. Have a great day." If you visit cafes or restaurants, it's good to use polite expressions like, "Can I have?" or "That was delicious." These small phrases make your interactions more natural. After breakfast, I went to the bookstore next door. I love reading, especially books about travel and culture. The store smelled of paper and ink, and soft music was playing in the background. I walked around slowly, looking at the colorful covers. A young woman working there asked, "Can I help you find something?" I said, "Yes, I'm looking for books about English expressions and daily life." She smiled and said, "We have a section for that. Follow me." She showed me a few titles, and I picked one called Everyday English for Real Conversations. I said, "This looks perfect. Thank you for your help." She said, "You're welcome. That one's very popular among learners." I paid for the book and left the store. You can practice polite requests like, "Can you help me find?" or "I'm looking for." These sentences make your English sound respectful and clear. After returning home, I opened the new book and started reading. It had many examples of how to speak naturally in real-life situations. For example, it explained how to greet people, how to ask for directions, and how to order food. I took notes in my notebook and practiced speaking aloud. Saying the words out loud helps improve pronunciation and memory. Later in the afternoon, I decided to do some exercise. I put on my sneakers and played a short workout video. The trainer said, "Keep moving. Don't give up." I followed along. Even though I felt tired, I pushed myself to finish. When it ended, I felt great and said, I did it. After the workout, I took a shower and made a smoothie with bananas and milk. It tasted refreshing. I sat by the window again and watched the clouds moving slowly across the sky. I thought about how practicing English feels similar to exercising. The more you do it, the stronger you become. In English, you can express motivation by saying things like, I can do it, or I'll keep trying. These simple sentences are powerful when learning something new. In the evening, I decided to call my friend Emma. She lives in another city, and we hadn't talked for weeks. When she answered, she said cheerfully, Hey, it's been so long. I said, I know. How have you been? She said, I've been busy with work, but everything's going well. We talked about our daily routines, our plans, and even some funny moments at work. Talking to friends is a great way to practice listening and speaking skills. During our chat, she said, I started learning to play the guitar. I said, That's amazing! How's it going? She said, It's fun, but my fingers hurt a little. I laughed and said, That means you're learning the right way. When you talk to friends, you can use phrases like, That's amazing! How's it going? Or, I'm happy for you. They make conversations friendly and natural. After the call, I made dinner, some rice with vegetables and chicken. While cooking, I practiced describing what I was doing in English. For example, I said, I'm chopping vegetables, and now I'm stirring the rice. Speaking aloud while doing simple tasks helps improve fluency and confidence. When dinner was ready, I sat down and said, This looks good. I ate slowly, thinking about how much my English had improved because of small daily habits. After dinner, I cleaned the kitchen again and washed the dishes. I turned on some soft background music and started humming. Cleaning after a meal felt relaxing. I thought about how English can be learned naturally through daily life. Whether you're cooking, cleaning, or walking outside, you can describe your actions in English. That simple habit trains your brain to think in English. Before going to bed, I picked up my notebook and wrote a few sentences about my day. Today, I went for a walk. I talked to my neighbor. I read a new book about English. I called my friend Emma. It was a good day. Writing short daily reflections like this helps improve both grammar and vocabulary. You don't need to write long paragraphs. Just describe your day in simple, clear sentences. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of calm. I decided to water the small plants on my balcony. As I poured water into each pot, I noticed how green and fresh the leaves looked. I touched the soil and smiled, thinking, they're growing well. While caring for the plants, I practiced saying, I'm watering the plants and the flowers are blooming. Speaking in this way connects language learning with real life. After breakfast, I checked my email and saw a message from my colleague, Daniel. He wrote, "Can you help me review a short report before the meeting?" I replied, "Sure, send it to me." He sent the document and I read it carefully, making small corrections. When I finished, I sent it back with a note saying, "I've made a few edits." "It looks good overall," he replied. "Thanks, that was really helpful." You can use expressions like, "I've checked it," or "it looks good." These are common in workplace communication and make you sound professional. Later in the afternoon, I went to the park again for some fresh air. There were many people jogging and kids were flying kites. I found a quiet bench and opened my English book. A little girl sitting nearby looked curious and asked, "What are you reading?" I smiled and said, "It's an English book. I'm learning new words." She said, "I'm learning English too." I laughed and said, "That's great. What new words did you learn today?" She said, "I learned apple, orange, and banana." I said, "Those are good words to start with." That simple exchange reminded me that learning begins at any age. When you talk to children, your language becomes clearer and more natural. You can use short positive sentences like, "That's great," or "Good job." That morning, I decided to start my day with a short walk around the neighborhood. The sun was shining softly and the air felt fresh. I noticed that some of the flowers in the community garden had bloomed overnight. I stopped to admire a bright yellow daffodil and said softly, "You look beautiful today." A gardener nearby smiled at my comment and replied, "Thank you. I planted them last week." We talked for a few minutes about the different flowers in the garden and the best way to take care of them. That small conversation reminded me that everyday English can happen anywhere, even in a garden. You can practice phrases like, "These flowers are beautiful," or "How do you take care of them?" These are simple and friendly ways to start a conversation. After the walk, I went to the local bakery. The smell of freshly baked bread filled the air. I said, "Good morning. What do you recommend today?" The baker, a cheerful man named Mr. Harris, replied, "Our whole wheat bread is very popular, and the muffins just came out of the oven." I decided to take one of each and said, "I'll take both, please." While waiting, I noticed a little boy staring at the cupcakes. I asked, "Would you like to choose one?" He nodded shyly, and his mother smiled and said, "Thank you for being so kind." The boy picked a chocolate muffin, and I smiled, feeling happy to help. Small acts of kindness often create short conversations and give you a chance to practice English. Phrases like, "Would you like this?" or "Here, take this," are very useful in daily life. Later, I walked to the nearby park to enjoy my breakfast. Families were enjoying the sunshine, and a group of teenagers were playing football. I noticed an elderly couple feeding pigeons by the fountain. I said, "Good morning. The pigeons are lucky to have you." The man smiled and said, "It's our daily routine. It keeps us active and happy." I nodded and said, "It's wonderful to see people enjoying simple things." That small interaction reminded me that practicing English doesn't always require long conversations. Even short, polite exchanges help improve fluency. After the park, I went back home and decided to clean my living room. While dusting the shelves, I found a small notebook with my old notes. I started reading them and smiled, remembering how I used to struggle with simple sentences. I read one line aloud, "I am going to the market today." Then I corrected another line I had written, making it more natural. "I'm going to the market to buy some vegetables." Practicing sentences out loud while doing chores helps reinforce memory. Later, I received a phone call from my cousin Robert. He said, "Julia, I found a small recipe book you might like. Can I drop it by?" I replied, "Yes, please. I love trying new recipes." He came over with the book, and we sat down for tea. He said, "These recipes are simple and easy to make at home." I thanked him and said, "I'm excited to try them." Sharing hobbies like cooking or reading is a natural way to use English in conversation. You can practice asking questions like, "Can I see that?" Or, "What is this about?" These sentences are helpful when someone shares something with you. In the afternoon, I went to the grocery store. While selecting some vegetables, I asked the shopkeeper, "Are these carrots fresh?" He smiled and said, "Yes, they came from the farm this morning." I said, "Great, I'll take half a kilo, please." He weighed the carrots and I paid for them. Small exchanges like this teach you how to speak naturally in everyday situations. You can also use sentences like, "Can I have?" or "How much does this cost?" On the way back home, I noticed my neighbor Clara struggling with a heavy bag of groceries. I said, "Do you want some help?" She smiled and replied, "That would be wonderful. Thank you." We walked together and she told me about her morning. She said, "I had to wake up early to prepare breakfast for my family and then water the garden." I replied, "You're very organized. I usually start my day with a walk." She laughed and said, "That's a great habit too." Sharing small details about daily routines makes conversations more engaging. When I returned home, I decided to prepare lunch. I was chopping vegetables when I remembered that I was out of salt. I thought for a moment and said, "I'll ask Mrs. Brown if she has some." I knocked on her door and said, "Hello, Mrs. Brown. Could I borrow some salt, please?" She smiled and replied, "Of course, Julia. Take as much as you need." While returning home, I said to myself, kind neighbors make life easier. You can use polite sentences like, "Could I borrow?" or "Thank you for helping me." These are very practical in daily life. That evening, I decided to go for a short walk again. The park was quieter now, and the sun was setting. I noticed a young man struggling to untangle his kite. I approached and asked, "Do you need some help?" He looked relieved and said, "Yes, please." We worked together for a few minutes until the kite was flying high in the sky. He said, "Thank you so much. It looks amazing now." I replied, "I'm glad it worked." Moments like these show how simple gestures can start a friendly conversation. Later that night, I called my aunt to share the day's events. I said, "Hello, Aunt. Today was full of small adventures." She laughed and said, "I'm happy to hear that. What did you do first?" I told her about my walk, the bakery, and helping the young man with the kite. She said, "It sounds like you practiced a lot of English today." I smiled and replied, "Yes, every small conversation helps me improve." During our chat, she asked, "Have you tried the new recipe book Robert gave you?" I said, "Not yet, but I'm planning to try one tomorrow." She said, "That's exciting. Cooking is a great way to learn new words and practice English." Talking about hobbies, daily activities, and experiences is a natural way to expand vocabulary and practice conversation. The next morning, I woke up early to start my day with some reading. I opened the book I had bought about English expressions. It had dialogues and examples from daily life, such as buying groceries, talking to neighbors, and ordering food at restaurants. I practiced reading out loud sentences like, "Could I have a cup of tea, please?" And "How much does this cost?" Reading out loud helps with pronunciation and fluency. Later, I decided to do some gardening on my balcony. I planted some herbs and watered the existing flowers. While working, I said out loud, "I am planting basil and mint today, and the flowers need more sunlight." Speaking while performing tasks makes English more natural and helps you think in the language. After gardening, I prepared a small lunch and invited my cousin Robert to join me. I said, "I tried a new salad recipe from the book you gave me." He smiled and replied, "I can't wait to taste it." We sat together, enjoyed the meal, and discussed the ingredients. He explained why certain vegetables work well together, and I asked questions like, "What makes this taste better?" Or, "How long should I cook it?" Sharing meals and talking about cooking is a practical way to practice English in context. In the afternoon, I went to the local post office to send a small package to my friend Emma. I said to the clerk, "I'd like to send this package to another city, please." The clerk asked, "Do you want standard or express delivery?" I replied, "Standard is fine." After filling out the form, I handed it back and said, "Thank you for your help." The clerk smiled and said, "You're welcome. Have a nice day." Using polite expressions like "I'd like to" or "Thank you for your help" is very useful in public places and formal interactions. Later that evening, I received a call from Emma. She said, "I just got your package. Thank you so much." I replied, "I'm glad it arrived safely. I hope you like it." We talked about our day and shared small stories about errands, meals, and walks. Small daily conversations like these are perfect for improving listening and speaking naturally. After the call, I spent some time cleaning the living room. While arranging the books and magazines, I practiced describing my actions. I am putting the books on the shelf, and I am dusting the furniture. Describing simple daily actions in English is a practical method for beginners and intermediate learners. In the evening, my husband joined me for a cup of tea. We talked about our plans for the weekend. He said, "Would you like to go to the park tomorrow morning?" I replied, "Yes, that sounds perfect. We can take a short walk and enjoy the fresh air." Planning activities together is a great way to practice making suggestions and responding politely. You can use sentences like, "Would you like to?" or "That sounds great." These expressions are very useful in everyday English. Before going to bed, I reflected on the day. I thought about all the small interactions, the bakery, the park, helping someone with a kite, cooking, phone calls, and daily chores. Each small moment was an opportunity to use English naturally and confidently. The next morning, I woke up early to start the day with some light stretching routine. While stretching, I said out loud, "I am stretching my arms and legs, and I will do this for 10 minutes. Speaking while exercising helps you connect English with daily actions naturally. After stretching, I prepared a healthy breakfast with oatmeal, fruits, and a glass of milk. I said, "I am adding bananas and strawberries to my oatmeal today, and this looks colorful and delicious." Describing simple steps while cooking improves fluency and makes your sentences sound more natural. After breakfast, I decided to organize my study desk. I put all my notebooks, pens, and books in order. I said, "I am arranging my notebooks by color, and I am cleaning the shelves as well." While organizing, I found an old photograph of my family during a picnic. I smiled and said, "That was a wonderful day. I remember it clearly." Talking about memories and experiences helps you practice past tense sentences. You can use phrases like, "I remember when," "That was a fun day." Around mid-morning, I received a phone call from my friend Daniel. He said, "Hello, Julia. I am planning to visit the local museum today. Would you like to join me?" I replied, "That sounds great. I'd love to join." We agreed to meet in 30 minutes. While waiting, I packed a small bag with water, a notebook, and a pen. I said, "I am ready to go. I have everything I need." Simple sentences like this are easy to remember and useful for everyday activities. When I arrived at the museum, Daniel was waiting at the entrance. He greeted me with a smile and said, I am excited to see the new exhibition. I replied, Me too. I heard they have a display of ancient artifacts. We bought our tickets and started exploring. As we walked through the exhibition, I said, This sculpture looks amazing. It must be very old. Daniel agreed and added, Yes, it is from the 18th century. The details are impressive. Observing things around you and describing them in English helps expand your vocabulary and improve speaking skills. We visited several sections of the museum. In the art gallery, I noticed a painting of a serene landscape. I said, The colors in this painting are so beautiful. Daniel replied, Yes, the artist used bright colors to show sunlight and nature. Talking about art or objects around you allows you to practice descriptive sentences. You can use phrases like, It looks, or the colors are, to describe different things in your environment. After the museum visit, we decided to have lunch at a nearby cafe. I said, I will have a sandwich and a cup of tea, please. Daniel ordered a salad and water. While waiting, we talked about our favorite exhibits. He said, I loved the ancient coin collection. It was very detailed. I replied, Yes, I found it fascinating too. It's amazing how old coins tell stories from the past. Discussing experiences and sharing opinions is a great way to practice conversational English. You can use phrases like, I loved, or I found it too. After lunch, we went for a walk along the riverside. The water was calm and the breeze was gentle. We noticed children flying kites and people jogging. Daniel said, It's such a peaceful place to relax. I replied, Yes, I enjoy walking here. It's very refreshing. Talking about feelings and impressions can improve your English fluency. You can use sentences like, I enjoy, or it feels. On our way back home, we passed by a small bakery. I said, Shall we buy some bread for tomorrow? Daniel agreed, and we entered the bakery. The baker greeted us warmly and asked, What would you like today? I said, I'll take 2 loaves of whole wheat bread, please. My friend Alex said, and a few chocolate muffins for me. The baker smiled and said, Sure, I will pack them for you. Polite exchanges like this are very common in everyday life. Expressions such as, I'll take, or can I have, are useful in shops and cafes. After returning home, I unpacked the groceries and arranged them in the kitchen. I said, I am placing the bread in the bread box and I am keeping the muffins in a small container. Describing small actions helps reinforce vocabulary and sentence structure. Later, I decided to water the plants on my balcony. I said, I am watering the basil and mint plants today, and the flowers look healthy. Speaking aloud while performing tasks helps make English a natural part of your daily routine. In the evening, my husband and I prepared a simple dinner together. I said, I am chopping vegetables for the salad. Can you boil the pasta, please? He replied, Sure, I will start now. Cooking together is a practical way to practice giving instructions and responding politely. You can use phrases like, can you, or I will in everyday conversations. While eating dinner, we talked about our plans for the weekend. He said, Would you like to visit the countryside tomorrow? I replied, Yes, that sounds wonderful. We can take a short hike and enjoy nature. Discussing plans and making suggestions is a great way to practice conversational English. Phrases like, would you like to, or that sounds great, are common and easy to remember. After dinner, I decided to relax with a cup of tea and read the English book I recently bought. It had dialogues and examples from daily life. I read out loud sentences like, "Can I help you?" and "How much does this cost?" Practicing reading out loud improves pronunciation and listening skills. Later, I wrote a short note about my day in my notebook. Today, I went to the museum with Alex. We saw many interesting exhibits. We had lunch at a cafe and walked along the riverside. I watered the plants and cooked dinner with my husband. It was a wonderful day. Writing about daily life in simple sentences helps improve grammar and vocabulary. You can practice past, present, and future tenses naturally. The next morning, I woke up early and prepared breakfast. I said, "I am making eggs and toast for breakfast today, and I will add some fresh fruits on the side." My husband joined me at the table, and we enjoyed our meal while discussing plans. He said, "After breakfast, we can go for a short bike ride." I replied, "That sounds fun. Let's take the bikes to the park nearby." Talking about future plans helps practice using will and going to in English. After breakfast, we went outside and started our bike ride. The park was lively with families walking and children playing. I said, "It's such a beautiful day to ride bikes." My husband replied, "Yes, the weather is perfect. I enjoy seeing people enjoy the outdoors." Observing surroundings and sharing opinions helps develop conversational skills. You can practice phrases like, "I enjoy," or "It's beautiful today." While riding, we stopped near a small pond where ducks were swimming. I said, "Look at the ducks. They are swimming so gracefully." My husband smiled and said, "Yes, they look very peaceful. Nature is amazing." Talking about nature and describing what you see is a simple way to expand vocabulary and practice descriptive sentences. After the bike ride, we returned home and decided to prepare lunch. I said, "I am making vegetable soup today, and I will add some spices for flavor." My husband helped by chopping vegetables and setting the table. We practiced giving instructions politely using sentences like, "Can you cut this?" and "I will stir the soup." Cooking together is a practical way to use English in everyday life. I hope these examples help you understand how to practice speaking English in everyday situations. Remember to practice regularly and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Learning a language takes time and patience. Good luck on your English learning journey.
In the evening, I decided to call my cousin Robert to share some good news. I said, "Hello, Robert, I have some exciting news to share." He replied, "Really? What happened?" I said, "I finished reading the book about English expressions. I practiced many new sentences today." He said, "That's wonderful. I'm proud of your progress." Talking about learning and achievements helps practice past tense and expressing feelings. Later, I went to the local market to buy some fresh fruits for the evening. I said to the seller, "I would like some apples, oranges, and grapes, please." He asked, "How many kilograms of each?" I replied, "Half a kilogram of each, please." While paying, I said, "Thank you for your help." Polite exchanges and simple shopping phrases are very useful for daily life. When I returned home, I shared the fruits with my husband. We sat together and enjoyed them while discussing our plans for the evening. He said, "Shall we watch the sunset from the balcony?" I replied, "Yes, that's a perfect idea." Observing nature and talking about it helps practice descriptive sentences. You can use phrases like, "It looks," or "The view is beautiful." After enjoying the sunset, we decided to prepare a light dinner. I said, "I am making a salad with the fruits we bought today, and I will add some nuts and honey for flavor." My husband said, "I will prepare some tea to go with it." Preparing meals together provides an opportunity to practice giving instructions, offering help, and speaking about actions in English. The following morning, I woke up early again, feeling motivated to make the most of my day. I started with a few minutes of light stretching. I said aloud, "I am stretching my back and arms, and this helps me feel more energetic." Speaking while moving helps link English with physical activities, making learning natural. After stretching, I prepared a simple breakfast with eggs, toast, and a glass of orange juice. I said, "I am toasting the bread now, and I will cook the eggs sunny side up." Describing what you are doing aloud improves both vocabulary and fluency. After breakfast, I decided to clean my study area. I arranged my books by size and color and said, "I am putting the books on the shelf from largest to smallest, and I am clearing the desk for more space." While cleaning, I found a few old letters from my cousin Emma. I smiled and said, "These letters are from years ago. They remind me of good memories." Talking about past events helps practice using past tense naturally. Phrases like, "I remember when," or "That was a good day," are very useful in storytelling. Around mid-morning, I received a call from my friend Michael. He said, "Hi, Julia. I'm thinking about visiting the new art gallery today. Would you like to join?" I replied, "Yes, that sounds wonderful. I'd love to come along." While getting ready, I said, "I will take my notebook and a pen to write down new words I learned today." Preparing for outings with a purpose, like learning English, makes practice consistent. When I met Michael at the gallery, he greeted me. "Hello, I'm excited to see the new collection." I replied, "Me too. I heard there are many modern paintings." We bought our tickets and started exploring. I said, "This painting is very colorful. The artist must have used many different techniques." Michael added, "Yes, the textures and colors create a beautiful effect." Observing and describing objects around you is a great way to practice descriptive English. As we walked, we noticed a sculpture that looked unusual. I said, "This sculpture looks very modern and unique." Michael said, "I like how it represents movement. It feels like it's alive." Discussing opinions and impressions helps practice phrases like "I like," "it feels," and "it looks," which are useful in everyday conversation. After lunch, we decided to take a short walk around the city center. The streets were lively with people shopping and children playing. I said, "It's wonderful to see the city so busy and colorful today." Michael replied, "Yes, walking in the city helps me notice many details I usually miss. Observing and describing your surroundings improves vocabulary and sentence formation. You can use phrases like, "It's wonderful to see," or "I noticed that," to practice. On our way back, we passed a small bookstore. I said, "Shall we go inside and see if there are any interesting books?" Michael agreed. Inside, I asked the store clerk, "Can you show me books about English learning and daily expressions?" The clerk smiled and replied, "Of course, follow me." I picked a book titled Daily English for Conversations and said, This looks perfect for practicing real-life sentences. Small interactions like this help you practice polite requests and everyday vocabulary. After buying the book, I returned home and started reading. I practiced sentences aloud, like, "Can you help me find this?" And "I am learning new words today." Speaking aloud while reading helps improve pronunciation, fluency, and listening comprehension. Later, I prepared a light lunch with a salad and some boiled eggs. I said, "I am chopping lettuce for the salad, and I will add some boiled eggs and olive oil." Describing actions in English while cooking reinforces language learning in daily life. In the afternoon, I decided to water my plants on the balcony. I said, "I am watering the basil and mint today, and the flowers look healthy and green." Speaking while doing simple tasks strengthens English habits. After that, I called my cousin Emma. I said, "Hi, Emma, how are you today?" She replied, "I am doing well. I just finished reading a new book." I said, "That's great. What is the book about?" Talking to friends allows you to practice question forms, responses, and past tense naturally.
Later, I went to the grocery store to buy ingredients for dinner. I asked the shopkeeper, "Are these tomatoes fresh?" He replied, "Yes, they were delivered this morning." I said, "Great, I will take half a kilo, please." While paying, I said, "Thank you for your help." Using polite questions and responses in stores is very practical for daily English practice. After returning home, I started preparing dinner. I said, "I am cooking rice and making a vegetable stir-fry, and I will add spices for flavor." My husband helped by chopping vegetables. He said, "I will wash the carrots and peppers." We practiced giving instructions and responding politely using simple English sentences. Cooking together creates natural opportunities to speak and understand English. During dinner, we talked about our plans for the weekend. He said, "Would you like to go to the countryside tomorrow?" I replied, "Yes, that sounds wonderful. We can enjoy the fresh air and maybe take a short hike." Making plans and using phrases like, "Would you like to?" and "That sounds wonderful" helps improve conversational skills. After dinner, I prepared a small notebook to write about the day. I wrote sentences like, "I woke up feeling energetic and ready to start a productive day." I began with a short stretching routine to wake up my muscles. I said aloud, "I am stretching my arms and back, and I will do this for 10 minutes." Speaking while moving helps connect English with physical actions naturally. After stretching, I prepared a simple breakfast. I said, "I am making scrambled eggs with toast, and I will add some fresh tomatoes for flavor." Describing each step of your actions aloud helps improve fluency and pronunciation. After breakfast, I decided to organize my wardrobe. I said, "I am folding the clothes and arranging them by color, and I will put the jackets on the top shelf." While organizing, I found an old scarf I had forgotten about. I said, "This scarf reminds me of the winter trip we took last year." Talking about memories and experiences helps practice past tense naturally. You can use phrases like, "I remember when," or "That was a great day" in daily conversation. Later, I received a call from my cousin Robert. He said, "Hi, Julia. I found a new hiking trail we can explore this weekend. Do you want to join?" I replied, "That sounds wonderful. I would love to join." While preparing for the day, I said, "I will take my notebook and pen to write down new words I learn." Preparing with a goal in mind makes learning English more effective and practical. When I met Robert at the park, he greeted me warmly. "Hello, I'm excited about the hike today." I replied, "Me too. I heard the trail is very scenic." We started walking, and I said, "The trees look beautiful with the sunlight shining through the leaves." Robert added, "Yes, it feels peaceful and relaxing here." Observing surroundings and describing them in English helps improve vocabulary and descriptive skills. Phrases like "it looks" or "it feels" are very useful. As we walked, we saw a small pond with ducks swimming. I said, "Look at the ducks, they are swimming so gracefully." Robert replied, "Yes, nature is calming. It makes the day feel more relaxed." Talking about nature allows you to practice adjectives and descriptive phrases naturally. You can use sentences like, "It is peaceful," or "The water looks clear." After walking for a while, we stopped to rest on a bench. I said, "I will take a short break and drink some water, and it's nice to sit and enjoy the fresh air." Robert said, "Yes, the sunlight is warm and comforting." Discussing feelings and sensations helps practice sentences that describe personal experiences. Phrases like, "it feels," or "I enjoy" are common and easy to use. Later, we continued the hike and noticed wild flowers along the trail. I said, "The flowers are colorful and pretty, and I like the yellow and purple ones the most." Robert replied, "Yes, they add beauty to the path. Nature is full of surprises." Talking about observations improves your ability to describe things in detail, which is important for fluent conversation. After returning home from the hike, I decided to relax and prepare a light lunch. I said, "I am making a sandwich with fresh vegetables and cheese, and I will add some lettuce and tomatoes for crunch." My husband joined me in the kitchen and said, "I will make some tea to go with it." Cooking together helps practice giving and following instructions in English naturally. Phrases like "I will" or "can you" are very useful. While eating lunch, we discussed our weekend plans. He said, "Would you like to visit the farmer's market tomorrow morning?" I replied, "Yes, that sounds perfect. We can buy fresh fruits and vegetables." Discussing plans allows you to practice future tense sentences and polite suggestions. Phrases like, "Would you like to?" and "That sounds perfect" are practical in daily conversation. After lunch, I decided to water my balcony plants. I said, "I am watering the basil, mint, and rosemary today, and the flowers look healthy and green." Speaking aloud while performing tasks makes English feel natural in everyday routines. Later, I called my friend Michael to tell him about the hike. I said, "Hi, Michael, I had a great hike with Robert today." He replied, "That's wonderful. What was your favorite part?" I said, "I really liked the pond with the ducks and the wild flowers along the trail." Talking about experiences and sharing details improves your ability to use past tense and descriptive sentences. In the afternoon, I went to the local grocery store to buy ingredients for dinner. I said, "I would like to buy some tomatoes, carrots, and potatoes, please. And can you also give me some fresh spinach?" The shopkeeper replied, "Yes, everything is fresh today." I said, "Thank you for your help." Polite requests and responses in stores are essential for daily English practice. Using phrases like "I would like" or "can you" are practical and easy to remember. Returning home, I unpacked the groceries and began preparing dinner. I said, "I am chopping the vegetables for a stir-fry, and I will add garlic and olive oil for flavor." My husband helped by cutting the carrots and bell peppers. He said, "I will wash the spinach for the stir-fry." Cooking together provides natural opportunities to practice English in real-life situations. You can use sentences like, "I am doing this," and "can you do that?" to make conversation practical. While preparing dinner, I remembered to check the recipe from the English book I had bought. I said, "The recipe says to add soy sauce and a little ginger, and I will follow the steps carefully, using instructions from a book or guide." This helps practice reading comprehension and following sequences in English.
Later, my husband asked, "Do you want me to set the table?" I replied, "Yes, please. It will be ready by the time the food is done." Practicing polite offers and responses is useful in everyday life. During dinner, we discussed our favorite meals. He said, "I enjoy stir-fry the most because it is healthy and quick to make." I replied, "Yes, I like it too. It is easy to prepare and tastes delicious." Talking about preferences helps practice expressing opinions. Phrases like "I enjoy" or "I like" are simple and effective for conversation. After dinner, we relaxed with a cup of tea and talked about our plans for the following week. He said, "Would you like to take a short trip to the countryside next weekend?" I replied, "Yes, that sounds perfect. We can plan a hike and enjoy fresh air." Discussing plans and using phrases like "Would you like to?" and "That sounds perfect" strengthens conversational English naturally. Later in the evening, I decided to write a short journal entry about my day. I wrote, "Today I went hiking with Robert. We saw a beautiful pond with ducks and colorful wildflowers. We had a great walk and enjoyed the fresh air. After returning home, I prepared lunch and watered my plants. In the afternoon, I went shopping for dinner and cooked a vegetable stir-fry with my husband. We enjoyed dinner and talked about our weekend plans. It was a productive and enjoyable day." Writing about daily experiences improves grammar, sentence structure, and vocabulary. It also helps practice past, present, and future tenses naturally. The next morning, I woke up early and started my day with stretching exercises. I said aloud, "I am stretching my arms and legs, and I will do this for 10 minutes." After stretching, I prepared a simple breakfast with eggs, toast, and fresh fruit. I said, "I am making scrambled eggs and adding tomatoes, and I will pour a glass of orange juice to drink." Describing daily tasks aloud helps build fluency and makes English practice consistent. After breakfast, I decided to clean the living room. I said, "I am dusting the shelves and organizing the books, and I will vacuum the carpet as well." While cleaning, I found an old photograph of my family. I said, "This photo reminds me of our summer trip last year." Talking about past experiences helps reinforce the use of past tense in natural conversation. Later, I received a call from my cousin Robert. He said, "Hi, Julia. I found a small picnic spot by the river. Would you like to join me this afternoon?" I replied, "Yes, that sounds wonderful. I would love to come." Preparing for outings while planning to use English in conversation makes learning purposeful. Throughout the day, I practiced English in natural, everyday situations while cooking, cleaning, shopping, hiking, and talking with friends and family. Speaking aloud, describing actions, sharing experiences, and making plans helped me improve vocabulary, sentence structure, and fluency. Writing about daily life reinforced past, present, and future tenses. By integrating English into daily routines, learning becomes practical, consistent, and enjoyable. Small, mindful actions like asking questions politely, describing surroundings, and expressing feelings gradually build confidence and make English a natural part of life. Remember, fluency is not about perfection. It's about practice, consistency, and using English in real-life moments every day. Keep speaking, observing, and describing your world, and your English will grow stronger step by step.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to English Without Limit. I'm your host, Julia. If you're new here, this channel helps you improve your English every single day through real-life stories, natural conversations, and daily situations. So make sure to listen carefully, repeat after me if you can, and enjoy today's English listening practice. Today, I want to share something that happened to me recently. It's about dealing with unexpected problems. It's one of those things that can happen to anyone, and it really helps you practice daily English expressions. Last week, I was getting ready for work early in the morning. I made breakfast, packed my lunch, and got dressed. Everything was going smoothly until I tried to start my car. It didn't make a sound. I tried again, and still nothing. My car had completely stopped working. I remember standing there thinking, oh no, not today. I called my neighbor Daniel, who is really kind and always helps others. He came over with his tools and said, let's check your battery first. We opened the hood and found that one of the cables was loose. Daniel fixed it, and after a few minutes, my car finally started. I felt so thankful. That morning taught me how small problems can become big if we don't stay calm. Now, let's think about this situation in English. When you face a problem like that, what do you usually say? You can say things like, something's wrong with my car, or it won't start. If someone helps you, you can say, thank you so much for your help, or I really appreciate it. After that morning, I went to work feeling a bit late, but proud that I handled the situation calmly. At lunch, I told my coworker Emily about it. She laughed and said she once locked herself out of her house while taking the trash out. She had to wait for her husband to come home with the key. We both laughed because these small, everyday problems connect us all. You see, life always brings little surprises. Sometimes your car won't start. Sometimes your key gets stuck. And sometimes the power goes out in the middle of cooking dinner. But what really matters is how we react. When you speak English in these moments, it helps to stay relaxed and use short, clear sentences. For example, if the power goes out, you can say, the electricity is gone, or there's a power cut. If you're talking to someone on the phone, you might say, sorry, the line is breaking up, or can you hear me clearly now? These expressions sound simple, but they make your English more natural. Imagine you're visiting a new country and something unexpected happens. Maybe your bus is late or your order at a restaurant is wrong. Staying calm and using polite English makes every situation easier. Speaking of restaurants, I remember one time when my friend Daniel and I went out for dinner after work. I ordered vegetable soup, but the waiter brought chicken soup by mistake. Instead of getting upset, I smiled and said, excuse me, I think this might be the wrong soup. The waiter apologized and quickly brought the right one. That small act of kindness made the evening pleasant for everyone. In moments like that, kindness and clear communication are powerful. You can always use polite phrases like, excuse me, could you please, and thank you for your help. They show respect and make people want to help you more. Another everyday story I can share happened on a rainy day. I was walking to the supermarket with my umbrella when a strong wind suddenly flipped it inside out. Everyone around me laughed because it looked so funny. A man nearby, Mr. Johnson, came over and said, "That umbrella doesn't like the rain very much." We both laughed and he helped me fix it. It reminded me how laughter can make awkward moments easier. When you talk to others in English, small jokes or kind words can make communication warmer. You can say something like, "It's not my lucky day," or "That was unexpected." These expressions make you sound more fluent and friendly. English is not just about grammar, it's also about confidence and emotion. Even small daily stories like fixing your car or losing your umbrella can help you learn useful language. Every time you listen to a story like this, try to repeat some sentences aloud.
For example, repeat after me. I can handle this. It's okay. I'll find a solution. Thank you for helping me. These are phrases you can use in real life when something doesn't go as planned. Once, my cousin Sophia shared a story that taught me something important about staying patient. She was baking a cake for her parents' anniversary, and just as she was about to put it in the oven, she realized she had forgotten the sugar. Instead of getting angry, she laughed, added the sugar, and started again. The cake turned out perfect. She said, "Sometimes mistakes make the story better." That made me think, in English and in life, mistakes are not bad. They are part of learning. When you make a mistake in English, don't feel embarrassed. Just correct yourself and continue. That's how you grow and sound more natural. So today's listening lesson is about staying calm, speaking clearly, and finding positive ways to handle problems. Whether it's a broken car, a wrong order, or a missing ingredient, there's always something to learn and a way to practice your English while doing it. I'll tell you another simple story from my daily life. A few days ago, my neighbor Mrs. Wilson knocked on my door because she couldn't figure out how to use her new washing machine. She said, "Julia, I pressed the button, but nothing is happening." I checked and saw that the plug wasn't connected. We both laughed. She thanked me with some homemade cookies. It was such a warm moment that reminded me how kindness connects people. In English, you can describe this situation by saying, "My washing machine isn't working," or "I can't turn it on." And when someone helps you, always say, "You're very kind," or "That was really nice of you." These small expressions make communication more personal and respectful. Language learning is not only about big conversations. It's about small daily interactions, saying hello to your neighbor, asking for help, thanking someone, or explaining a little problem. Each of these moments helps you practice English in a real, natural way. So today's listening lesson is about staying calm, speaking clearly, and finding positive ways to handle problems. Whether it's a broken car, a wrong order, or a missing ingredient, there's always something to learn and a way to practice your English while doing it. I'll tell you another simple story from my daily life. A few days ago, my neighbor Mrs. Wilson knocked on my door because she couldn't figure out how to use her new washing machine. She said, "Julia, I pressed the button, but nothing is happening." I checked and saw that the plug wasn't connected. We both laughed. She thanked me with some homemade cookies. It was such a warm moment that reminded me how kindness connects people. In English, you can describe this situation by saying, "My washing machine isn't working," or "I can't turn it on." And when someone helps you, always say, "You're very kind," or "That was really nice of you." These small expressions make communication more personal and respectful. Language learning is not only about big conversations, it's about small daily interactions, saying hello to your neighbor, asking for help, thanking someone, or explaining a little problem. Each of these moments helps you practice English in a real, natural way. So, as you listen today, think about your own daily stories. Maybe you missed the bus, spilled some coffee, or forgot your umbrella at home. These small experiences can teach you new English phrases and help you improve naturally. One of the most common daily problems people face is forgetting something important at home. I remember one morning when I was running late for work, and halfway down the street, I realized I had left my phone on the kitchen table. I stopped, took a deep breath, and said to myself, "Okay, Julia, stay calm. You can go back and still make it on time." I walked quickly back, grabbed my phone, and then laughed because I had also forgotten my lunch bag. It was one of those mornings when everything seemed to go wrong, but instead of getting angry, I smiled and said, "It's just a busy day." That small moment reminded me how our attitude changes everything. When things like this happen, we often use phrases like, "I forgot my phone," or "I left it at home." If you're talking to someone, you can say, "I'll be late because I need to go back." These short and simple sentences help you communicate clearly in daily life. Later that day at work, my coworker Sarah told me she had left her house keys inside and locked the door. She stood outside for 2 hours waiting for her husband to come home. She said it was a funny memory now, but at that time she was really worried. We laughed together and talked about how everyone has small accidents sometimes. These shared experiences make daily English conversations natural and real. I think daily stories are powerful because they show how language connects us. Let me tell you another one that happened last month. It was a Sunday afternoon and I was preparing lunch for my family. My plan was to cook rice, vegetables, and chicken. But when I opened the fridge, I realized I didn't have any onions or garlic. So I decided to ask my neighbor, Mrs. Brown, for some. When I knocked on her door, she smiled and said, "Of course, take as many as you need." That day, we cooked together and shared lunch. Moments like this are great for practicing English expressions such as, "Can I borrow some onions?" or "Do you have any garlic?" When you offer help, you can say, "Sure, let me get that for you." Or, "I have some, you can take it." These phrases are useful in everyday life, especially when you want to sound friendly and polite. After lunch, Mrs. Brown and I had tea together. She shared a story about when she moved to this neighborhood many years ago. She said she didn't know anyone at first, but by helping others and talking to people, she made friends quickly. That reminded me that communication is the key to feeling at home anywhere in the world. English learners often worry about speaking perfectly. But the truth is, small conversations like, "How are you today?" or "Would you like some tea?" are what build confidence. You can practice speaking naturally by using short and polite sentences. Later that week, something funny happened again. I was in the supermarket with my shopping list in hand. I needed rice, milk, bread, and eggs. But when I got to the checkout counter, I realized I had forgotten my wallet at home. I smiled at the cashier and said, "I'm so sorry. I left my wallet at home. I'll be back soon." She was very kind and said, "No problem. I'll keep your items here." I rushed home, got my wallet, and came back. When I returned, the cashier smiled and said, "You made it." We both laughed, and I thanked her for her patience. That simple interaction reminded me that kindness and honesty always make communication easier. If you ever forget something, just stay calm and speak politely. Use sentences like, "I'll come back soon," or